Welcome back. I am so glad you are here for this journey today. Find a comfortable spot and let's get settled. Have you ever wondered what it would be like to walk through a land where the mountains touch the sea, where people asked big questions about life, and where stories were told around fires that burned thousands of years ago? Today, we travel back in time. We go to a place called Greece, a small land with a very big story, a land that changed the world forever. So close your eyes for just a moment, take a slow breath, and let the story begin. A very long time ago, before cities were tall and roads were wide, there was a land in the south of Europe. This land was called Greece. It was a beautiful place. There were tall mountains, deep valleys, and a blue sea that seemed to go on forever. The sea was everywhere. You could never go too far in Greece without seeing water. And because of this, the people of Greece learned to sail. They built small wooden boats and they traveled across the water. They were curious people. They wanted to know what was on the other side. They wanted to find new places, new food, and new ideas. The earliest people in Greece lived thousands of years ago, long before writing, long before books. They lived in small groups. They hunted animals and grew simple food. They did not have cities yet. They did not have kings yet. But they had something very important. They had each other. And they had stories. Stories were everything in those early days. A story could teach a child how to survive. A story could explain why the sun rose each morning. A story could bring people together around a fire at night. And so Greece began, not with armies or gold, but with voices. Quiet voices telling stories in the dark. And somewhere in those early stories, the seeds of something great were already growing. Something that would one day reach every corner of the world. Many hundreds of years passed, and slowly, something new began to grow in Greece. People started to build. They built stronger homes. They grew more food. They traded with their neighbors. And two great civilizations appeared. The first was called the Minoan civilization. The Minoans lived on a large island called Crete. This island sat in the middle of the Blue Sea, south of the Greek mainland. The Minoans were remarkable people. They built large and beautiful palaces. The most famous was called Knossos. Inside Knossos, there were hundreds of rooms, long hallways, and colorful paintings on the walls. The paintings showed dolphins swimming in the sea. They showed young people dancing and playing. Life in Knossos looked peaceful and full of color. The Minoans were also great traders. Their ships sailed across the sea carrying oil, wine, and fine pottery. They brought back copper, gold, and new ideas. They were connected to the world around them. But then, around 3,500 years ago, something happened. something difficult and mysterious. The Minoan civilization began to fade. Historians are still not completely sure why. Some believe a great volcano erupted nearby. Others believe there were earthquakes, or perhaps new people arrived with more power. Whatever the reason, the Minoans slowly disappeared from history. But they left something behind: their art, their buildings, their ideas. These things did not disappear. They passed on, quietly, to the next great civilization that was already rising on the Greek mainland. And that civilization had a very different spirit. After the Minoans came another great people. They were called the Mycenaeans. The Mycenaeans lived on the mainland of Greece. They were strong and organized. They built cities with thick stone walls. These walls were so heavy and so large that later Greeks believed they could only have been built by giants. The most famous Mycenaean city was called Mycenae. It sat on a hill, surrounded by those massive stone walls, and it looked out over a wide green valley below. The Mycenaeans were warriors. They valued strength and courage. They wore armor made of bronze. They carried long spears and round shields, and they told stories about great heroes. Heroes who fought monsters, sailed dangerous seas, and won great battles. The most famous story from this time was the story of the Trojan War. In this story, a great Greek army sailed across the sea to attack the city of Troy. They fought for 10 long years, and in the end, they used a clever trick: a large wooden horse. The horse was a gift, but hidden inside were Greek soldiers. And when the people of Troy brought the horse inside their city walls, the soldiers came out at night and opened the gates. The city fell. This story was told for hundreds of years. It became one of the most famous stories in all of human history. But slowly, like the Minoans before them, the Mycenaeans also faded. Around 3,000 years ago, their cities fell. Their writing disappeared, and Greece entered a quiet and dark time. A time that historians call the Greek Dark Ages. For many years, the stories went quiet, but they never truly stopped. After the long quiet, Greece slowly began to wake up again. New towns appeared. People began to trade once more. Writing returned, and something completely new began to take shape. Instead of one kingdom ruled by one king, Greece became a collection of independent cities. Each city had its own government, its own army, its own laws, and its own way of life. These cities were called city-states, and the two most famous city-states were Athens and Sparta. Athens and Sparta were very different from each other. Athens was a city that loved ideas. The people of Athens believed in discussion. They gathered in open spaces and talked about life, justice, beauty, and truth. They built beautiful temples and created great works of art. And, very importantly, they created something called democracy. Democracy is a word that comes from two Greek words, demos, meaning people, and kratos, meaning power. So democracy means power to the people. In Athens, free citizens could vote and have a voice in how their city was run. This was a remarkable idea, an idea that would travel across centuries and reach every corner of the modern world. Sparta was different. Sparta was a city built on strength and discipline. From a very young age, children in Sparta were trained to be soldiers. Boys left their families at the age of 7 and went to live and train together. They learned to endure cold, hunger, and pain without complaint. Spartan soldiers were feared across the ancient world. And yet, both cities, so different from each other, were part of the same land, the same people, the same great story of Greece. For a long time, the Greek city-states lived alongside each other, sometimes in peace and sometimes in conflict. But then came a great danger from outside. From the east, a very powerful empire began to move toward Greece. This was the Persian Empire. The Persians had already conquered many lands. Their army was enormous. Their king, Darius, and later his son, Xerxes, wanted to add Greece to their empire. The first great battle came at a place called Marathon. A large Persian army landed on the Greek coast. The Athenians and their allies met them there, on the flat plain near the sea. The Greek army was much smaller. Many people believed it was impossible to win. But the Greeks had something the Persians did not expect: speed and courage. The Greeks ran toward the Persian army at full speed. The Persians were surprised. The battle was fierce but short, and the Greeks won. According to the famous story, a soldier named Phidippides ran all the way from Marathon to Athens to bring the news of the victory. He ran about 40 kilometers without stopping. When he arrived, he said only one word: Nike, which means victory. And then he collapsed and died. Whether this story is completely true, we cannot be sure, but it was remembered for centuries. And today, we still run a race called the Marathon, named after that famous run. 10 years later, the Persians came again, this time with an even larger army under Xerxes. The battles were long and difficult, but in the end, Greece survived. The Persian army was pushed back, and Greece entered its greatest age. After the Persian Wars, something wonderful happened in Athens. The city was filled with energy and new ideas. This time is called the Golden Age of Athens. It was a time of great beauty, great thinking, and great discovery. The leader of Athens during much of this time was a man named Pericles. Pericles loved his city deeply. He wanted Athens to be the most beautiful city in the world. He used public money to build magnificent temples and public buildings. The most famous of these was the Parthenon. The Parthenon was a temple built on a high hill called the Acropolis. which means high city in Greek. It was made of white marble and was dedicated to the goddess Athena, the protector of the city. Even today, thousands of years later, you can still see the ruins of the Parthenon standing on that hill. They are broken and weathered by time, but they are still there, still beautiful, still proud. During this golden age, great thinkers walked the streets of Athens. Men like Socrates, who asked deep questions about life and truth. His student Plato, who wrote about ideas and the perfect society. And Aristotle, who studied everything from animals to stars to the way governments work. These men did not just change Greece, they changed how human beings think about the world. Their ideas are still studied and discussed today in schools and universities everywhere. Greece was not always at peace. The city-states often fought each other. These wars were long and exhausting, and slowly they weakened Greece. Then, from the north, came a new power, a kingdom called Macedonia. And from Macedonia came a young man who would become one of the most famous figures in all of history. His name was Alexander. He was the son of the Macedonian king Philip, and he grew up learning, training, and dreaming of great things. One of his teachers was the great philosopher Aristotle. Alexander loved learning. He carried books with him, even on long military campaigns. When his father died, Alexander became king at just 20 years old. And he did not wait. He moved quickly. He led his army east, across deserts and mountains, through Persia, Egypt, and all the way to the borders of India. He never lost a single major battle. In Egypt, he was welcomed as a pharaoh. In Persia, he took the great throne. Everywhere he went, he built new cities. Many of these cities he named Alexandria, after himself. The most famous Alexandria was built in Egypt, on the coast of the Mediterranean Sea. It became one of the greatest cities of the ancient world, a city of libraries, learning, and discovery. Alexander died very young, at only 32 years old, in the city of Babylon. No one is completely sure why he died so suddenly, but his journey had already changed the world. Greek language, art, and ideas had spread across a vast area of the earth. This was called the Hellenistic Age, the age of spreading Greek culture. After Alexander, Greece slowly lost its political power. New empires rose. Rome became the great power of the ancient world, and Greece became part of the Roman Empire. But something extraordinary happened. Even though Greece lost its power, its ideas did not disappear. The Romans admired Greek culture deeply. They learned the Greek language. They studied Greek philosophy. They copied Greek art and architecture. In a quiet but powerful way, Greece continued to shape the world even after its political glory had passed. And from Rome, Greek ideas traveled further still, into Europe, into the Arab world, into the libraries of medieval scholars, into the minds of scientists during the Renaissance, into the constitutions of modern nations. The word democracy, that was born in Athens, is now used in almost every language on earth. The stories of Greek heroes and gods are still told to children today. The questions asked by Socrates are still asked in classrooms around the world. This is the journey of Greece, a small land by the sea that asked big questions and gave the world answers that have never truly grown old. And perhaps that is the lesson of this story. Great things do not always come from size or strength. They come from curiosity, from the desire to learn, to question, and to share what you discover with others. You, as a learner of English, are part of this same spirit. Every time you listen, every time you try a new word, every time you keep going, even when it is difficult, you are on your own journey of discovery. And that journey matters. If this story moved you or taught you something today, please leave a comment below and share one word or one idea you learned. Your words help this community grow. Subscribe to Storyline English so you never miss a story. And come back soon. The next journey is already waiting for you.